Okay.
Have you ever felt that aiming in third-person games doesn't quite feel right, or feel as comfortable as it does in first person? Well, if you do, you're not crazy. There are some surprising differences that I'll show you, and I'll also cover how best you make use of this information so you can aim comfortably and accurately in both formats. Did you know that with your character offset to the left, like in most third-person games, it takes more mouse movement to move your crosshair to an identically positioned target when you aim to the left, and it takes less if they're on your right. In both scenarios, the target is positioned 90 degrees to the side of my character, and my camera is the same distance away. Yet you can see when aiming left, I end up having to look behind me to get my crosshair onto the target. With Kovacs sensitivity matcher, I can see that this took 6,000 counts of mouse movement, and when aiming to the right, I'm still looking in front when my crosshair lands, and it only took 3,200 counts this time.
What? And also, Apex doesn't have a gun rarity tiers, but it has random guns. And you don't get the mods you want. It's the same system in a way. Fortnite is worse at it, obviously. This blew my fucking mind. What are you making that from? What distance to what is? Wait, and what?
Get my crosshair onto the target. With Kovacs sensitivity matcher, I can see that this took 6,000 counts.
Okay, but like, how does he know where to start swiping? Like, am I stupid? Or does it feel like he just put his mouse on a random place and then swipe a random amount of distance each time? 90 degrees to what? To the character? Oh, okay, I understand. Okay, I get it. But that's still not fair. Like, yeah, I hope he automated it. Yeah, but I'm not an expert on third-person shooters. I don't even like them. I was like, what the fuck is he setting the mouse? Setting it so like to the side of the character. Yeah, 90 degrees. One is looking forward and then back, and the other one's both looking
90 degrees to the side of my character, and
like, at the end of the day, it's the same amount of distance. When it comes to mapping with your crosshair, left or right, up and down, side to side, corner, it's all the same amount of distance. So like, this guy is counting his character as part of this. But that doesn't really matter when you're shooting someone, because your brain is focused on your cross, and your crosshair is right on the middle. Just long to aim at a specific target. No, yeah, I get it, but like, this is like a weird scenario, I think. I don't know, because like, if you're always careful of where your crosshair placement is, it shouldn't really matter.
my camera is the same distance away.
I got it.
Yet you can see when aiming left, I end up having to look behind me to get my crosshair onto the target. With Kovacs sensitivity matcher, I can see that this took 6,000 counts of mouse movement, and when aiming to the right, I'm still looking in front when my crosshair lands, and it only took 3,200 counts this time. My mouse sensitivity is technically the same all the way around. It's the exact same mousepad distance to aim 90 degrees left and 90 degrees right. But because of this camera offset, the position of the target on my screen changes depending on the direction I'm aiming. It's almost like you're playing on two different sensitivities depending on which way you're moving your crosshair, and in my opinion, this is the biggest culprit for third person feeling off, particularly for aim enthusiasts and for people with a flick heavy playstyle.
That's so funny. He's talking about me, guys! He's talking about me! He literally defined me 1 by 1, bro. 1 to 1.
Aiming due to pivots from that one point. But in third person, things get a little more complicated. You have your camera offset on the X-axis, which in-game is forward and backwards, and in most games you have a Y offset, so left and right, placing the character to the left side of the screen. There is also usually a Z offset, so up and down, that places the camera a little higher up than the player character. These variables can be configured in all sorts of ways. Paladins has no Y offset and a larger Z offset to compensate, but most games go for this over-the-shoulder left side perspective. The tricky yet necessary thing here is that your aiming pivot point is still inside your player character. If it was sitting at the camera position like it does in first person, aiming around would also move your character, which
Also, this guy knows what he's talking about and it's funny. And I think he's literally using the rarest skin in Fortnite. It's apparently the rarest one.
rather problematic. So we have a locked X offset, meaning our camera has to stay this distance away from the character. Standing near walls can change these locked offsets, but mostly this doesn't matter. We also have a locked Y offset, so our crosshair has to stay this distance away from our character. They're not allowed to be decoupled and move independently. In this example, we have our player character and camera pivot point in the center here. This inner circle represents the Y offset, so the gap between the crosshair and character. And the outer circle is the X offset, so the distance between the camera and the character. Imagine this is our crosshair coming out of the camera. If I wanted to aim this target over to my left, I have to stay locked into these two offsets and pivot around the character. So when I aim to the left, I have to travel all this extra distance around it to reach it.
Wow,
And when aiming to the right, I basically get to take a shortcut and arrive there much sooner. If I was playing first person, it'd be the same 90-degree angle both ways. But because we are locked into these offsets, our aim is noticeably different depending on where we are aiming. And here is one more example to show this off in-game. If I hold down A to strafe left and track this target, I start to move further and further away. And overall, this doesn't take much mouse movement to do. If I hold down D to strafe right and track them, I move in a tight spiral, meaning I have to use significantly more mouse movement, completely different.
Yeah, no,
To sum this point up for how it impacts our
saying.
actual gameplay, aiming at targets to our left feels slower, aiming at targets to our right feels faster.
Oh my
And
God.
one caveat here is that this effect isn't as noticeable at longer ranges. The effect becomes much more pronounced the closer they get to your sides. Ultimately, there isn't too much we can practically do about this. I think the most valuable thing to glean from this is an understanding of why your aim may feel off in these games. Simply knowing that you're not crazy or wondering why your aim may feel worse in third person can be quite validating and can help you get over some hurdles that may have prevented you from playing these games. I know that personally, considering I care so much about aim, if it feels off or bad in certain games, that can kill my motivation to learn or play it.
Literally, holy
When in the long run, it may actually end up being something I would have really enjoyed if I had stuck to
crazy.
it. With Valve's third-person MOBA shooter on the horizon, adapting to and learning third-person is suddenly more important to me, and I'm sure to many others as well. This left-right aim discrepancy impacts flick-heavy playstyles the most in my opinion. To have consistent and accurate flicks, you need a solid understanding of what mouse movements correlate to certain crosshair distances on screen. Tracking and micro-flicking tends to be a much safer bet in third-person games. Flicking still has its place, of course, but if it's causing you trouble, you may want to lean more heavily into tracking. Close-range tracking in particular is easier in third-person too, which I'll get to in a moment. The second main point of confusion that's worth covering is how it impacts field of view. A common example I can think of is Fortnite players jumping into aim trainers like Kovacs and wondering what field of view to play on. While there are third-person scenarios, the vast majority are first-person, so naturally a Fortnite player will choose 80 field of view, the same as in Fortnite. But when you do this, everything feels so zoomed in and claustrophobic, even though you're playing on the same field of view. So what gives? Check this out. This is Fortnite Tile Frenzy on 80. And this is also Fortnite Tile Frenzy on 80 field of view. It may seem much wider, but it's the exact same setting. I've simply cranked the Z camera offset to 10,000. I even added two walls here at an 80-degree angle, so we can see we are in fact on that same field of view. What's changing is how much extra information there is between our character and the camera. I go into it in more depth in my screen distance video, but the quick version is that the higher your field of view, or the further your screen or targets are away from you, the slower they appear to move, and the slower your mouse sensitivity feels when aiming at them.
Thank you for the prime, Francis.
For this reason, there is no perfect way to convert sensitivities between first and third person perspectives. Playing on your Fortnite sensitivity and FOV in a first-person game or scenario might technically be the same, but it will feel faster because your targets appear to be closer to you. The bigger they are on your screen, the more screen distance they travel. It's why standing in front of a target on first person makes the enemy appear to be moving very quickly, but when toggling to third person, they are taking up much less of our screen and moving across fewer pixels. So they appear to move slower even though their movement in-game hasn't changed at all. For our gameplay, the takeaway here is that tracking close-range targets is much easier than in first person. Despite them being so close to us, they don't appear to move nearly as fast as they would in first person. The trade-off here is that tracking distant targets can feel more difficult. For long-distance aiming, whether it's clicking or tracking, you'll likely find it beneficial to rely more on your movement to help you aim, rather than always using your mouse to move these tiny distances. It depends on the game, of course, but in general, I recommend setting these.
Wait, does this feel like a WoW shooter? Wait, I just realized, why does this feel like he's playing WoW in a shooter?
More on your aim, rather than always using your mouse to move these tiny distances. It depends on the game, of course, but in general, I recommend setting up your sensitivity so you can aim and especially track.
It's so funny that I learned all this without even knowing. Like playing so much of it. Like I apply all of these things to my own gameplay and you guys see. But I didn't really think much about it, right? It just came in laterally, like moving around.
Mid-range targets well and rely more on very low
I love seeing about it, guys, I do. I love it so much, cause I love aiming and shit. I love it.
You may want to ease up a little to be more useful in more situations. Remember, the field of view is often very low in third-person games. You may see a decent amount of information in front of you with the X offset, but above and especially behind can feel incredibly hard to adjust to if your sensitivity is too low. And that is especially true if you have to react to something on your left side. And another relevant recommendation here would be to not convert your sensitivity from a first-person game to third person.
Oh shit, the finals.
And also not to get caught up on what centimeters per 360 you're playing on. Play the game and adjust it to suit the aiming for this new camera perspective and the aiming demands of that particular game. 45 centimeters per 360 may sound low to you in a high field of view game like maxed out Apex, but 45 centimeters is quite reasonable on lower field of view games like Overwatch or zero-build Fortnite. This comes back to the pixels per degree, but I've covered that in other videos, so check them out if you want to know more about this. And finally, I'll quickly touch on some visual quirks of third person that can contribute to some of the weirdness you may experience. With a left side offset, a target on the right side of your screen is larger than if they were on the left side. In this example, the right side is 9 centimeters, the left is 8 centimeters, and the center is 6 centimeters. The targets to be smaller at the center of the screen, even on first person, but what changes with third person is how each side places your camera closer or further to the target, rather than the same distance. And one last quirk is how much the scene on our screen shifts while aiming. When aiming left and right like this, you can actually see the path the camera is taking to move the crosshair around. The camera doesn't just look left, it curves around, shifting and exposing the screen quite dramatically. This is especially noticeable if we use extreme offsets. Aiming like this feels incredibly awkward and basically impossible. While we're not being subjected to crazy offsets like this in-game, the same impact is still happening, just to a lesser degree. Fortunately, these are the sorts of things you will adjust to over time. They may just present some initial awkwardness if you aren't accustomed to third-person aiming yet. To help myself learn more about third-person aiming and to adjust to it as quickly as possible, I started making a custom Fortnite map that would let me get my aiming reps in, as I didn't like how much downtime popular combat maps have. And the Battle Royale modes especially have far too much downtime for what I wanted. I wanted constant third-person aiming against moving targets in a real game environment, so that's exactly what I ended up making.
That's crazy. Honestly, I think Fortnite has helped me indirectly to cope with third-person shooter problems that I didn't really put into perspective until I watched this video. Because these were things that I was feeling and that I've always felt. But I was like, I don't know, man. I guess it's cause It's just third person, right? And you just describe it off as like, yeah, this is just worse, you know? And you're like, whatever, just keep playing. But like this helps to put it into perspective. Like the real problem. I don't know what I'm raping. Oh no, and he's in game year one. Alright. Dude, he used oh my god, how old is this guy? Oh okay, yeah, like just from the profile picture I already know. It's no ye. Oh yeah, Aimer.